Good afternoon. My name is Heather Harris, and I am a member of the Alliance for Aging Board of Directors. I also serve as the chair of the Communications and Development Committee for the Alliance. The Alliance for Aging is the area agency on aging for both Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. I'd like to welcome you to the 2023 webinar series kickoff. This is our third in a series of Living Smarter, Aging Smarter themed webinars to date. The topics for today's event is Your Safety and Security, which is graciously sponsored by City National Bank. Today, we will discuss various ways to help ensure your physical, financial, and technological safety. We are truly grateful to City National Bank for their ongoing partnership and support of the Alliance for Aging, and especially for their sponsorship of our event today. We've assembled a panel of esteemed experts in the focus areas who will provide insight and tips to help ensure our safety and security. Those panelists are Michele Collie, who is Senior Vice President and Director of Community Reinvestment Act for City National Bank. We also have Lieutenant Mike Batista of the Miami-Dade Police Department, Special Victims Bureau, Vulnerable Victims and Missing Persons Unit. And then we have Luis Martinez Jr., Investigator, Community Outreach Division, and Carmen Durant, Victim Witness Counselor for the Elderly Vulnerable Adult Task Force, both of whom are of the Office of the State Attorney General, Katherine Fernandez Rundle. We are also honored to have as our distinguished moderator, Susan Holtzman. Susan is the Older Adult and Special Needs Advocate from the Office of Mayor Daniella Levine, Cava. Thank you to all of our panelists for your willingness to join us today and provide your knowledge and expertise to this conversation. This webinar will be made available for playback on the Alliance for Aging website, which is found at allianceforaging.org, and it is currently being aired throughout the United States via the Juniper platform. Hi to all joining from across the United States. Now, as the presentation is about to begin, one last item of note. Please mark your calendar for our next Living Smarter, Aging Smarter webinar. It will be held on Thursday, May 18th from 1:00 p.m. to 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and will be a discussion with our national experts on a topic that will affect not only our older adults, but the entire population of the state of Florida. The title is Hurricane Season is Here, Be Prepared. Once again, that's Thursday, May 18th at 1 p.m. I look forward to seeing you there. Now, it is my pleasure at this time to turn today's event over to Susan Holtzman. On behalf of the Alliance for Aging, we welcome you to today's webinar on safety and security. We hope you enjoy. Susan, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Heather, and what a pleasure it is to be here once again. As Heather mentioned, my name is Susan Holtzman. I work in the office of Mayor Daniella Levine Cava as her older adult and special needs advocate. I am a gerontologist, so this is my field of study and my field of interest, our aging population issues. I want to welcome everyone. And some of you that are new to our audience, those members that are viewing us on the Juniper platform, this is a new endeavor for us and very exciting to have people from across the country. Thank you to Juniper for including us on your content. So today we're going to discuss your safety and security. And this is going to include safety from financial harm, including banking and real property scams, and safety from physical harm. Our panelists, we have a great group of panelists, many of them I know and have worked with on a regular basis. So very excited that we can have this conversation publicly. You know, we have done several of these webcasts and there's an overarching theme that keeps coming up. And as I was preparing the script this morning, I noticed it. So that overriding theme that we see is about planning. As we age, we need to plan. We need to plan for our health. We need to plan for our families. We need to plan for our financial security and for our assets. So I think, we're going to keep coming back to that also as we get through through the program today. Just a little information that I wanted to share. In legal speak, legal crimes against people over 65 are referred to as elder abuse. So in the social services, we tend to say older adults, but elder abuse is the legal term, and that can be an important thing to know. And if you suspect elder abuse in Florida, you can call 1-800-96-ABUSE. That's 962-2873. So it's 1-800-962-2873. But always, if it's an emergency, or if you or someone you know may be in danger, or a crime is being committed, you can call 911. So we've already had a great introduction to our panelists. So let me get started with our first questions, and we're going to start with you, Lieutenant Batista. Can you tell us a little bit about what actually constitutes elder abuse or neglect, and how are crimes against older adults treated differently than crimes against those younger than age 65?
Sure, yeah. So my unit here, the Vulnerable Victims Unit at the Special Victims Bureau, we investigate specifically abuse, neglect, and exploitation against elderly persons and disabled adults. So like you mentioned before, adults 60, 65 years and older, per Florida State Statute 825, fall under the elderly persons definition. So per the statute, abuse is unintentional infliction of physical or psychological injury, or an act that could reasonably be expected to result in physical or psychological injury. As far as neglect basically is a caregiver or a person of trust failure or omission to provide for basic needs, basic care of an elderly adult, like food, shelter, supervision, medical services. That's the majority of what we get. And exploitation basically is knowingly obtaining or using or endeavoring to use an elderly person's finances or property, obviously without their consent. And so, my unit, we specialize in this. We also do child abuse and child neglect, but the bulk of our cases, we deal with vulnerable adults and our vulnerable population. So we have a great passion for what we do, and our department and our bureau takes these crimes very seriously. And, we're all very motivated when we get these cases because, a lot of our victims truly don't have a voice, right? So we're the ones that need to stand up for them and, make sure that we do right by them, make sure that they're not in harm's way.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm going to ask this question to all of our panelists, and feel free to be conversational. If there's something you want to jump in on, we're happy to have that happen. For all of you in general, what are the most common types of abuse that you are seeing? Michele, let's start with you.
Sure. Here in banking, and I'm not just at City National Bank of Florida, but at other banks that I've worked for in the past, as well as just banks in general, one of the things that we are seeing is that seniors, as they may lose their memory or have memory concerns, they're taken advantage of by their care providers. So we are always on the lookout, in our branches when somebody comes in and they're making large withdrawals, or maybe a check that's been written out to a nursing provider, and it doesn't seem to be along the norm. So the key is, that it may raise a red flag. So we are training our employees within the banks to recognize that type of activity, or if someone is acting, just a little bit different or acting very strange, or we pick up on something that they're saying, well, just sign here, or they act, mean towards that. We are obligated to report that type of behavior because we want to protect our clients' identity and their financial resources. So I recommend, because of that, that if you have, and I know most of our audience are elders, but if you have, immediate family that can be on your account and can monitor it. So both of my parents, I'm on their accounts. So with my dad, I have it set up that I get a text if something happens, if there's any activity that happens on his account, I can see what's going on. I can log in and see. So as the younger person, I'm paying attention to what's going on. And if I see something out of line, I might call him and say, Daddy, did you do this today? So I would just encourage you to have somebody else, another set of eyes looking at it and making sure that they're protecting. But we are seeing that sometimes an elder can be taken advantage of by their care provider or even by a family member. So it's important to look at that.
Great. So at the bank, the most common crime you're seeing is basically withdrawal, stealing of other people's money by a person who's not really authorized to do that.
And I'm sure Officer Batista can also say he's seeing the scams of using the phone. So they'll send a text or an email, and then somebody ends up transferring that money like, oh, your child's in jail and you need to send money right away. And it comes through email or a text. Do not click on that. Do not, contact that person that you have, that they're impersonating, and double check. If you can't reach them, don't send any money. I guarantee you that if your family member is in a crisis, they're not going to send you an email and they're not going to text you. They're going to find another way to reach out to you.
And we're going to dig into that
Yes,
a little
please.
deeper later on. So
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out to us. Carmen, what are you seeing most often?
If I may add, it's also financial exploitation, but what's happening is that the exploiter will falsify a power of attorney, will falsify paperwork that bank employees can identify because they're notarized and they look like legitimate legal papers. So it's important for individuals who are in the banking field to question the paperwork, which we've asked bankers that we work with to question it. There's, call family members, confirm the person on that form. It's very important to recognize that, the abusers are walking in with what looks like legal paperwork.
Yes. Yes, Carmen, we are seeing that as well. So you're correct. And that's, again, where you might have that other person on the account so we can make that phone call and double check, is this a legitimate, somebody just came in, and we can step away from the person that's in front of us and try to verify that information or say, we need to finish our due diligence before we go ahead and put this in place. So there are actions that we take.
And
So
may I add that if you are with an elder individual and a caretaker or family member, sometimes it's good to separate them. Stay with the victim, we call it a victim, and ask them if they're being forced to do anything, if they've chosen to complete the transaction. But I think it's important to separate them from whoever they're with.
Great advice. Great advice. And that also speaks to what I was mentioning before about planning. So if you use the same bank and you're banking regularly, have that paperwork in place, make sure the bank knows that it's in place and that you are the contact, who is your contact person, so that that's clear. Luis, my friend, good to see you.
Morning, Ms. Holtzman, and thank you for allowing us to participate on behalf of the State Attorney's Office. Thank you. And thank you to the wealth of the group that you've put together and Mr. Frank and the Alliance for Aging. This is an amazing group with a lot of information. What you touched on, and you said the word relationship, and Ms. Collie and Carmen, is I wanted to stress a banking relationship. So the trend that I learned is that growing up is that our elderly group tend to have a relationship with the same banking institution for a long time. And it, all of a sudden, and I understand, if you have a relative or family member, it may be more convenient to change banks, but that's something that we ask the bank, to question, to challenge if they can. Why are we changing all of a sudden? Why are we losing someone we've had them as a customer for 30 years? And then I know that this is a sensitive topic to say, and Carmen knows even more than me. Sometimes the individual doing the wrong thing is that person within that small circle of trust. So when Miss Collie mentioned that she monitors her parents' account, which by the way, it's a great tool and a fantastic idea, I recommend having more than one person, having a team of two folks monitoring the bank accounts so there's a checks and balances. We had a recent case in our jurisdiction, Carmen, and it was placed in the media, so I know we can speak about it. And it's nothing, but we had an elderly individual who's passed since then, where they retained an agency and an agency and the employees of the agency through a period of time. I want to say withdrew. Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're familiar with it. I want to say it was over $200,000 through a period of time. I don't remember the 200 and something. And thanks to the Elderly Vulnerable Adults Unit Task Force, they were able to, so far, they have 2 warrants. They issued an arrest on someone local and the other one fled the country, but we have great expectations that they'll be taken into custody. But yes, most important is having our partnership with the banking institution and having that relationship with the banking institution.
Great, very interesting. So one thing that we do want to understand better, just again for our audience. So our understanding is that this type of crimes against older adults is on the rise. So we know that obviously our older adult population is growing and will continue to grow. Can you give us, anyone have any insights on what kind of increase you've been seeing to this type of crime?
Yeah, so I can tell you, Susan, on our end, since let's say 2020, so the past 2 to 3 years, a lot of our cases have gone up. I mean, abuse, neglect, exploitation cases have gone up pretty significantly. And like you mentioned, of course, our elderly population is growing, and within the next 10 years, I know it's going to grow exponentially more. And I think a lot of it too is a lot of the work that there's tremendous people who do great work in this space, and I think a lot of these open dialogues and the awareness spreading of these crimes, I think has led to perhaps more people feeling comfortable in reporting them. Not only our elderly population getting bigger, but just to put it into perspective, in 2020 here in Special Victims we handled around 70 abuse cases, and 2022 we handled about 140. So wow. They basically doubled. In terms of exploitation and neglect, pretty similar trend. I mean, we've seen almost a doubling upward in reporting of these cases. So they're definitely on the rise. And, this affects all crime in general, but, elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation is certainly no exception to. These numbers are probably underreported, right? Or the number of cases are probably significantly underreported than the numbers we're actually seeing. And, we know this because from my experience and the investigations that we do, there's a lot of reluctance on our elderly community in reporting these crimes, right? And so a lot of what we see, like a lot of you have mentioned already, is our subject, let's say, in these crimes is 9 times out of 10, if not more, it's a person of trust or a caregiver, right? So I think what happens is a lot of these elderly persons may be getting abused or let's say exploited by somebody, an immediate relative, and maybe they don't have anyone else who can take care of them, and maybe they're scared of hey, if I report this person or I call 911 and something happens to them, I'm on my own. And I think they maybe I hate to say it, but I guess more willing to kind of put up with it, I guess, for lack of a better word, because they feel like I have no one else, and I don't I have no one else to take care of me, no one else to provide for me. So I think that's kind of a big deal too. So these numbers are probably pretty significantly underreported, I would say.
Interesting. And I think it's an important point to remember also that there is a question here of autonomy. So there may be cases, and actually Mike and I have experienced at least one case like this, where an older adult has a choice who and how they want to spend their money, who they want to give their money to, and they may be just fine with the decisions that they've made, but there may be another family member who's not so happy with it, and they may report it as abuse. And in cases like that, you know, we can depend on law enforcement to help sort of suss that out. And Michelle, I see you nodding in agreement, because you know, I had this happen with an aunt of mine. Mike and I had a case where a family member contacted us, and when we were able to speak to the older adult alone, she said, no, I'm very happy with the situation I have right now. It's just that my granddaughter doesn't like it. But so, you know, and I think for our listeners, and I know for myself, I have autonomy. I can make these decisions until I can't. And there just may come a time that I can't. I may develop dementia. I may have an accident or another health crisis where I'm out of commission for a little while. And if I have made no plans, and if I have not made any assignments, then that's the point where I've lost my autonomy, and I can't be making decisions. So, you know, there is a fine line, but it's important to note. So another issue here is that these scammers, people that target older adults, my understanding is they target specific people. So for example, retired businessmen are targeted with business scams because they tend to think that they have enough knowledge and experience to recognize a scam. And older low-income women are often targeted for discount clubs for medications because that appears to them that it will help them to save money. So can we talk a little bit about, like, what are the sort of kinks in our armor that potential abusers look for in a potential victim?
No, they're looking for individuals who are isolated. They're looking for individuals who are lonely. There's such a thing as romance scams with the elderly as well. We see it all the time in our office. Individuals who family members don't live locally, and they just enmesh themselves in their lives, build an amazing amount of trust, and they don't care how long it takes, but they're able to build that trust to the extent where you see the abuses that we're all privy to. But I think isolation, you shouldn't isolate yourself. You should become involved in day programs. You should have friends. You should have people that you trust. Family members should be in touch with these individuals daily or weekly. But there should be constant contact, because it's the isolation that brings out the exploiters.
Very interesting. And also, I think when we talk about neglect, and one form of abuse is self-neglect. So it's sometimes as we age, if we develop a health problem, we can start neglecting ourselves. And if people don't see us on a regular basis, they don't see that that's happening. And then that can really have this domino effect where your health really, really suffers and your well-being really suffers. So that idea that being socially involved, whether it's going to a church every Sunday or you know, having a game group, even online, if you can do that online, you can be involved in online groups where people see you regularly so that your well-being is looked after. What else, Louis? What sets us up as a victim?
Ma'am, sometimes, you know, Ms. Holtzman, you mentioned something very important, or you touched on it, pre-planning. It's important at a particular moment in our lives as we get closer to aging, that we pre-plan. We pre-plan, you know, what's going to be our circle of trust to take care of those important decisions and things like that. But sometimes they target, you know, some folks, when they get older, they tend to live close to their needs, the supermarket, the pharmacy, the hairdresser. And so it's about a block distance. And sometimes they tend to walk, and sometimes they tend to do it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're here in sunny Florida. It's just an amazing sun. And one of the scams, and Lieutenant Batista may be familiar with it, The individual's just walking along the street, the victim, and they're approached by two folks trying to score a quick lotto scam. It's the hot sun. They're carrying bags on the way back from the supermarket. They're starting to weigh, and they interrupt the individual walking, and they, somehow approach them, offer them help, and then somehow they involve them in, a quick lottery scam where they have a winning lottery ticket, look at it, verify it, whether it's on the phone, but I can't cash it, but I'm willing to sell it to you for whatever money you have in your bank. So here, this individual goes to the bank and this victim goes to the bank and takes out sometimes their life savings in exchange for that lottery ticket. And then these folks are gone. So sometimes they prey on the appearance, the time of day, the fact that they're going to a supermarket, routine. And it's important, even though they prey on routine, and I totally understand, it's important that we have a routine when we go to the bank, when a little more traditional, where they go to the bank, speak to the teller, withdraw the money. It's important sometimes to continue to follow those routines and do things online or via phone. That's one of the ones we find. The other one is the dreaded email, the internet. And those scams come in all kinds. You're the winner of a certain, I don't want to mention the name, because I don't want to tarnish it, but you're a winner of a certain lottery, that you win, that you got to apply for in the mail, and you've won, and all you have to do to collect it is go to the store, mostly one of the pharmacies, large change pharmacies, or the supermarket, and buy a gift card. And then all you have to do is give them the back part of the gift card. In order to win, when you win something, you don't have to go out and buy and spend money. The other scam is by email, is the same one, the romance scam. You have somebody interested to have a relationship, and they somehow they get your email. And a lot of us, we get ads and stuff, and we do it on social media. Some of us, as even though we're older, we love having social media, and social media, opens up, all kinds of information to folks out there, that this is their full-time job. This is their full-time job, to follow you on social media, learn about you, learn about the pictures you post with your grandkids, the names, the moments. These things are out there, but Carmen mentioned on trusting your caregiver, that small circle. I think, I don't remember the percentage, and if Carmen does, she's welcome to cut me off and jump in. But the higher percentage of our cases are that small circle of folks that they trust. That's the higher percentage on the subjects of our cases. I don't know if the lieutenant has the same outcome, but it's usually those folks that they trust. But then again, that's what I have to share on folks in the middle of the day walking and being approached by strangers and having their routines change.
Interesting. Mike, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so Lewis is on the money. I mean, that's the majority of what we see, the crimes of opportunity. More recently, we started to get some scams that, these people would reach out to an elderly person and say, hey, your family member was involved in a car accident, and, you need to send us X amount of money, or, we know where they are, and you have to send them X amount of money if you want to hear from them again. And like Lewis mentioned about the social media thing, right? So a lot of them, these guys are, our subjects in these cases will send photos of their family members, and it could be a photo that they took off of social media, right? But some of these elderly individuals, I guess, you become more naive, right? So you're seeing this picture, and you're not realizing that, perhaps this was taken from social media, Facebook, whatever, and they're sending money to these people because, they deem it to be credible, right? They're sending me a picture, and perhaps they try calling their relative or loved one, and they're not picking up the phone. So all of a sudden now this becomes, super credible, right? And they end up, like he said, sending a ton of money, sometimes their life savings. And even more elaborate than that, we got a case recently, which is the first that I've seen, to this magnitude. It was this lady in her late 60s. She was a nurse. She was a nurse for over 30 years at a hospital here in Miami, and she got contacted one day by someone who identified themselves as being a lawyer, an attorney from a law firm, and he told her this story about how they have this client who was recently deceased. He passed away from cancer, and he left her a pretty large sum of money as an inheritance. And the reason why he left it to her is because she cared for him. He was one of her patients when she was a nurse many years ago. So of course they sold her this story that seemed very feasible, right? I mean, hey, I'm a nurse. This guy's saying that I cared for him. They knew what hospital she worked at. And so basically they told her, hey, look, in order to be able to get this inheritance, we need you to send us a check and essentially pay taxes on that money is what they led her to believe, that she was paying some type of fees in order to be able to obtain that money. And she, I believe, ended up sending them over a total of $30,000. And the case became extremely difficult for us to investigate because when we started looking into it, some of the money was sent across the country, into other states. So, she unfortunately didn't do any of the, the research. I mean, she never looked into, the law firm and stuff like that. So, of course, when we started looking into it, we realized, this is like, complete bogus, right? But we've even been seeing some of those elaborate schemes where these people are telling her that they know intimate things about her, not just cold calling or sending a random email to somebody, right? So she totally believed it, and unfortunately she lost a big sum of money.
Wow, that's quite a story. And I do want to point out that our focus right now is older adults, but these things happen to people at all ages. It is not only older adults, although, as we've mentioned, sometimes older adults can be very specifically targeted. These internet and social media scams, I'm just going to fully disclose, I called Mike about one fairly recently because I put some furniture on a Facebook marketplace to sell. And I was contacted by several people immediately saying, I want this. And they looked scammy to me. So I ignored them. But then I got one who said, let me send you the money first, and then you can, and so, but they didn't ask anything about the furniture. And I thought that was a little odd. And I looked at his Facebook page, and he was in Vermont, and I couldn't figure out why he would want furniture in Miami to go to Vermont. So I was like, oh, but I want the money. But I don't know. Well, what should I do? Well, I didn't want to call Mike because I'll be embarrassed that I'm even thinking about this. But I did. I made the call. And Lieutenant Batista told me, that's a scam, ignore it, stay away from them. And that was what my gut was telling me. But, I thought maybe not. Maybe this is an opportunity for me. So not that I'm smarter or more alert than anyone else, but I'll say it happens to the best of us. And I'm grateful that I did that I made the call. It reinforced what I already know. And so now I have a little more armor going forward. And Michele, I've seen you nodding, and so I know you want to jump in here.
I am so full. So Susan, I was going to say that something that you said was what was on my mind. The fact that you should trust your gut instinct, right? Because something inside of you with that situation made you feel like you were not comfortable with it. So if you follow your gut, I guarantee you that your spirit will never lead you wrong. I was going to bring up two things that we do in our family, and it started when I think my daughter, who's now 22, they had like an emergency contact list at her preschool. But if you sent somebody else that wasn't on the list, they had a code word. And so if that person knew the code word, they could still pick her up. And so I kind of took that as something that we do in our family going forward, because I always tell my kids, and now I'm doing it with my mom and my dad, right? Where I'm telling them, if it's somebody, if it's something that I'm trying to reach you, or if there's really an emergency, that person is going to have this word. That person's going to know this word in order to, to get any information. So maybe you can set that up with your circle and say, this is the word, and it's got to be something unusual. It's not going to be anything you post anywhere, because nobody knows our family word, right? And so my son, the youngest one that's 11, he knows there's nobody who can walk up to him when he's walking home from the bus stop, just in our same neighborhood. Like you said, you're doing your routine. And so he's 11, coming from the bus stop the same time every single day. Somebody's watching, right? And so now they go up to him and say, oh, your mom said that she can't make it and she's not home. You got to go with me. If they don't say that word, that's not anybody he's going to get in the car with, right? He's supposed to press 911 on his phone right away. So I just say, even for elders, that you and your family have a conversation. Again, it goes back to planning. Have that conversation on how you can safeguard yourselves. I would say that if there's anyone listening that's, my age, I'm in my 50s, my parents are in there, my mom's 81 and my dad is 76. So they're, I'm very wary of them. So my mom goes on the little community bus to Walgreens and to Publix and all those things. And she met this lady and she's telling me, oh, she was so nice. And we're going to go to lunch. I'm like, Mommy, I want to meet her. Right. And so I took the initiative because I want to see what my gut felt. My mom now has this new friend who they're going to lunch and they're doing all these things. And I'm like, well, how old is this lady? Oh, she's about your age. Really? And she's just on the bus riding around in the middle of the day. She ain't got no job. Right. So, like, I'm thinking these things to myself. So my antenna is up because of what I do every day. So I'm more wary than probably anybody else, right? But I'm still telling my mom, I want to meet her. I'm going to see what day I can go to lunch with you guys so I can meet her. So just if you're the child, the adult that's helping your parents, or if this as a parent say, hey, I want you to meet my daughter, so that maybe you can get a second sense, so that we can see. And I did meet her and she's great and she's really nice. And she works the days that she was on the community bus when she wasn't working. She has some days off in the week. But I asked all kinds of questions. And my mom is like, you're so paranoid. No. And my mom is probably watching this because I did send her the flyer. So she'll tell you, but it's not paranoid. It's just making sure that I'm protecting my family, because at the end of the day, I don't want to have to call Lieutenant Batista and say, this is what's going on, or I don't want to see my parents or anyone I know on the news. I mean, it's just protecting ourselves. So those are just some tips that we're doing in our family. And that's the way that I try to make sure I'm protecting some way.
And that's a great tip. That's a great tip. I'm going to employ that one in my own family. And so another question for you, Michele, is, and I had asked we had asked for all of our speakers to give us some questions to ask, because these are common things. So if I receive a text saying that my online login for my bank account has been compromised, and to click on the link provided, what is the first step I should take?
Step number one, do not click on the link. Do not click on the link. Remember that your bank, we're here to protect you. So we're typically not going to send, if you have forgotten your password, or there's, it has been compromised, we're not going to call you. And if you do get that, the next step after not clicking on the link is to call the number on the back of your debit card or the number to your local branch and talk to them and ask them, hey, I got this, I received this text, and I can guarantee you 99.9% they're going to say, we did not send that text. The bank does not proactively text you information. We might send an email and it might come along with your statement, but we're not sending out a text for you to click on a link to get any kind of promotion, because we're understanding that these scammers exist. So your bank, we're also being trained by law enforcement on how to make sure that we're protecting us and you against those type of cyber attacks or scams. So please do not click on the link. Contact your bank. Use the numbers that you already know. Don't use the number and just click on that same phone number that texts you. Don't call that number. Call the number on the back of your card, your debit card, call the number on your statement, or contact the direct banking center or branch of your bank, okay? And all banks are following these type of rules.
So don't click on the link. That is our advice. And so I've gotten text messages about my Amazon account. Don't click on the link, right?
It's funny, I get a text on my Amazon account on my work phone. It's not even going to that phone number. So, you know, that's the other thing. Be wary of what's coming in. And you know, yeah.
Right. I have a work phone that used to belong to someone else, and I'm getting those messages for that person. And so it's clearly, and as I have heard Louis tell audiences that he talks to, if it sounds too good to be true, right, it is. So anyone that has a lottery ticket for sale, anyone that has, you know, if it
I
sounds
have that
good,
written down here.
anyone that wants to
Too good
just send
be
you money
true.
without asking about your furniture,
Yes.
if it sounds too good to be true. Okay.
Mhm.
So we looked at, one of the questions was about email scam. So we're basically saying, well, as far as emails go, again, what are the red flags? And I know in emails, it's often clicking on the link also. The other red flags would be having to send them money to get money.
Or
Right.
if you just look within the body of the email, there's usually a typo. So there's usually some kind of typos in the body of the email, or there's a typo within, if you hover over the email address it's coming from, there are usually typos in that. So the key is that in the body of the email, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and your family is fine. Again, that's where you can set up that secret word, that if there really was something, then the email would have started with that word, so that you know that this is really me, that I really, and I can guarantee you that if I'm really somewhere where I need help, I'm not sending an email. The other thing is not to click on the link, but also making sure that within that body of that email, you read it. If it's grammatical errors, because what ends up happening is we get so nervous about it, we get so concerned that this is happening, that we automatically forget about all these things that you're hearing on this, right? So take a minute after you read the email and just, you know, say, wait a second, let me just make sure this is legitimate. How do I feel about this? Try to reach that person. So take a minute to digest what's happening, because a lot of times you forget everything we've said on this webinar because you're so worried about the person that you think the email is about. Okay, so take 2 minutes and just try to digest everything and then go from there.
Thanks, Michelle. And Carmen, you wanted to add to that?
I wanted to add to that, you know, scammers will tug at your heart. We have a case where wonderful educated couple, elderly couple in California received a call from who they thought was their grandson, crying that he had just gotten into an accident and they were asking for $50,000 or they were going to arrest him. Tugged at their heartstrings. The person identified himself. According to our victims, he even sounded like their grandson. So what did they do? They went and they sent a money transfer of $50,000. For your participants, if you're to receive a call of that nature, take a second to confirm it. Take a second to go to another line, keep them on the line, go to another line and call your family member, call your grandson, call your daughter, your son, and confirm that call. But unfortunately, you know, it's an emotional moment. You have someone crying on the other line, reaching out to you. We were able to get restitution for the $50,000 from the subject, but we've had many cases where restitution was not possible.
Wow. Okay. So another thing that we're seeing quite a bit of, and I've been working a little bit with the state attorney's office on this. We have something called the Elder and Vulnerable Adults Work Group that was started by Mayor Levine, Cava, Katherine Fernandez, Rundle, our state attorney, and our commissioner, Senator Rene Garcia, where we're bringing agencies together, agencies from all over the state. We're working with 40 different groups and agencies to look at where the gaps are. So, you know, how sometimes communication between agencies can create a gap that creates an opportunity. So one of the things that we're seeing is real property theft. And by that, I mean, we're seeing homes being stolen and cars being stolen. But, you know, and it happens at all levels. It happens, we have $1 million homes being stolen. We have smaller homes in more depressed neighborhoods where an unscrupulous realtor, and we're not sure that they even are realtors, might bully an older person into selling their house. So can we talk, I want to talk a little bit about that. Your house can get sold out from under you without you knowing, based on false notarization of paperwork. So I see lots of heads nodding. Who wants to jump in? Luis, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, thank you very much, but I think I'm going to defer to Lieutenant Batista and Carmen. I'll just mention briefly, we do have cases where we even end up prosecuting the notary. You have someone that has, personal information or you even have cases where the folks are being scammed into a reverse mortgage, unfortunately, or mortgage on their property, or they're being, their information's being stolen, their papers are being notarized behind their backs, and they're being filed at the courthouse, and properties are being exchanged. And again, usually this is someone in the closer circle, in the closer circle, which Carmen, or I would recommend always like a yin and a yang, two individuals, one to say yes, one to say no, but it's someone to counterbalance when anything is happening. And it's important to have some, folks that you can go to, more than one individual in that circle you trusted or not, together doing the same thing together. But I'd rather defer to Carmen or Lieutenant Batista to see if they have more on that than I do.
If I may add, homes that are free and clear of mortgages are vulnerable homes. If a bank is attached to a home, then there's a process that you have to go through. If it's not, then your home is vulnerable. We've met with the state attorney, I'm sure, Susan, you've been part of that as well, about getting our offices, the clerk of courts, to flag elder individuals' homes, to be able to notify them if something unusual is happening on the account. In regard to taking over homes, they just sign fraudulent quitclaim deeds. That's all they do. It's easy. They take it to the clerk of courts. It's registered at that point. It's recorded, and you've lost your home. We've had that happen with homes. We've had that happen with empty lots where there's no one flagging these transactions. That's what needs to happen on that level. I believe for us to protect our population, it has to be on that level. Because the scammers just know.
Right, they know. And so we did draft legislation that is hopefully being an amendment to a current bill in Tallahassee that would increase penalties on notaries that falsify and that require stricter record keeping on these notaries. And so, and also there's a bill going through with higher penalties for any kind of financial abuse of older adults. So we're starting to see some action. And that's one of the things that we also identified through this elder and vulnerable adult work group, was this issue of how easy it is. So there are some protections. I think one thing we want to tell everyone, and then again, this goes back to planning. If you have your estate in order, if you own a home free and clear, then go to an attorney. Or here in Miami, we have Legal Services of Miami, and they provide free legal services, and set it up so there is a second person on that home so that it can't be taken away from a single individual, because that will help to safeguard it. You have to plan, because I mean, there's a horrific story that we heard from the state attorney's office that during COVID, a gentleman became ill and was sick for a long time, and his house was stolen, his car was stolen, everything, because he was incapable, because he was hospitalized with COVID. He was incapable of making decisions. So, you know, we're getting low on time, and there's a couple of things I also wanted to talk about. We want to talk about protections. And so how can we protect ourselves? Things like LifeLock, is that something that's worthwhile? And does anyone want to talk a little bit about that and how you can protect your banking assets, your credit report, et cetera?
You know what, it's not only LifeLock, it's, you know, it's Identity Force. Experian has a program for the elderly. There's different programs through different institutions that'll protect your accounts. And you can also add your home, information on your home to those accounts, and they will notify you. They will notify you if there's unusual transactions going on. They will call you directly. And I know they have special rates for 65 and older, if anyone's interested, but it's definitely worth the membership.
As well as possibly contacting the IRS too, to make sure, because at a certain age, you may not have to file taxes anymore, but we have found that individuals will use your information and file a return and get a refund. So you can always just, it's crazy. I know, Susan's like, really? We see it all. So, even if you set up some kind of free credit monitoring, just to get an alert if your credit is pulled. Another thing that I have for me personally, not just for my parents, and I've even my 22-year-old daughter that's just out of college, I tell her, set up alerts within your credit cards so that if a purchase is over, if you get any kind of purchase, it sends me a text. So I'll know. And if I didn't authorize that through Capital One or some of these other, credit cards that offer that service. And so when I use that card, I tend to use that card that I know is going to text me when I'm using it in some place public or on a website. Some credit cards are also offering you a way of having like a transcripted credit card number. So you don't actually put in the number on your card. You can request a card number every time if you want to purchase something online. And so it's like it's a reverse number so that you can put that in, and that way you're using that card instead of inputting your actual credit card online every time. So I believe that credit card companies and banks are really trying to make sure that we protect your financial information. And if you do get some type of fraud, contact your bank right away. Make sure that you're balancing my checkbook. I mean, kudos to my mom who still keeps that old-fashioned register. When I get off of this, she's gonna be like, "You told him all my business." But she still keeps an old-fashioned register. She still calls the bank and verifies, and her balance has to match exactly to the penny, or she's going in there. So she doesn't miss anything, or she'll call me, "Did you do something on my account?" The other day she said that, and I said, "Yeah, you told me to transfer." Oh, okay, you're right, I forgot. So you have to keep your checks and balances and set up use the alerts that the bank will send you, as well as your credit card companies.
Great, thank you. Now we only have a few more minutes, and Mike, I wanted to get into a little bit about protection as far as personal safety. So we get questions about, is it a good idea, for example, to have a Ring doorbell where you can see and record if people are coming to your door, and also cameras inside your home or inside the home if there are caregivers that are caring for an older adult and we suspect abuse. Are those good ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that work. At the minimum, having safeguards like that, I mean, they serve as a deterrent, right? If you're a caregiver for an elderly person and you know that their son or daughter or grandson, granddaughter has access to kind of check up on you, I mean, I think that serves as a pretty big deterrent. But definitely, yeah, I mean, the more safeguards you can have, things like the Ring, things like like we get a lot of cases with like Google cameras and stuff like that. I mean, I know that there's so many out there and so much technology now, but anything like that is super helpful. And I think too, like I mentioned earlier, it is an issue for us, and it's kind of hard. I guess it's kind of a hard issue to kind of address, but like I said, one of the biggest things that we see, and one of the issues that we face in investigating a lot of these crimes is, just like the mere reluctance on our elderly persons to, give up information, especially when, the subject in question is a caregiver. I think a lot of them feel like they, don't have any other option, and they just kind of, go along with, perhaps a bad situation, maybe because they feel like they have nobody else to care for them, right? And, there's so many agencies out there, and so many, like I said, tremendous people in this space that, there's so many resources that we can offer them, and I feel like maybe they're just not aware of it. So that's kind of a big thing for us is, that's one of the big roadblocks that we see in investigating these cases is, the reluctance on our elderly community and coming forward and, reporting these crimes to us.
And it certainly is hard to report family members. We can all understand that, but I do making that call, even if you're not making an emergency call. I had a situation where I returned a car lease, and 3 months later, I got a notification that I had been turned down for a car loan. Someone at the car dealer took my information and applied for a loan. I called my local police department, and they came over and they sat down and they looked at the whole thing and they talked to me about it. And they told me, this is what happened. This is how these things happen. This is what you need to watch out for. And that was because I was angry. That's why I made that call. But, we have agencies that are here to help us, and we need to make those calls. I think we're actually a little bit over. So I did want to say, just our takeaways: make the call, make a plan, have plans for your assets, have plans for your care. If you need to report abuse in Florida, you can call 1-800-962-2873. If it's an emergency or someone is in danger, call 911. Any last words of wisdom anyone wants to share?
Don't click the link.
Don't click the link. Have a password. That's a good one.
If it's too good to be true, it's not.
Right. Trust your gut.
Trust your gut. Trust your first gut feeling.
Trust your gut. And we did have someone mention in the chat that there is Owner Alert, a free service in Broward County designed to help you protect your property from scams or fraud by notifying you if a document is received, changing the ownership of your property. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of services like that. But that's called Owner Alert, and that's available in Broward County. So I guess that's it for today. I want to thank you all for participating. What a great discussion we had. I certainly hope all of you in our audience have found this to be of value, and that these agencies are here working for you. Your banks are working for you. Your police are working for you. Your state attorney's office is working for you, no matter what state you're in. And every state has an elder abuse line. So you can find out what that is and know what that is. And watch out for your friends too. It's often reporting. If you notice a friend might be in trouble, if you notice, and share this information. That's the other thing I'm going to ask. Share this information with 5 people that weren't on this call, so that they know. And that's that whole building community and having that sense of community and combating isolation. We need to talk to each other and help each other out. So thanks so much. We'll see you next time. We're going to talk about disaster preparedness and protection, and that's all about having a plan. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.